Hi guys, it's Natalie here today. I wanted to make some Christmas cards using a couple of last season's stamps, including the lovely Art Deco 6x8 stamp and the Wishing You Love stamp set, because I think sometimes, you know, these classic things, they just don't go out of style, and you can use them in new and different ways that you haven't tried before, and it just helps to build your creativity, I think, to think of different things. So I'm going to try something different that I didn't try, that I haven't done before, that I didn't do last year, just to mix it up. So I am starting with the great big background piece from the Art Deco stamp set that I'm going to put as my background piece. So I'm just lining it up on my paper, and we might even go as far as to put a magnet on it. And I'm going to heat emboss this with gold glitter embossing. I think there's going to be a few places on this video where I'm just going to like speed through it, because you know how to do heat embossing. You don't need to see me do that in real time. But I'm going to use my mini Misty, and I'm just putting down some of that anti-static powder first, because it is quite a large area that I'm going to heat emboss. So I don't want to be spending ages fiddling around with getting all those little spare bits out of the way. Now, whilst I'm on a roll doing some heat embossing, I'm also going to take some of the images out of the Wishing You Love stamp set. There's these two sized holly leaves or holly clusters and little branch vines as well. And I'm just going to stamp and emboss them with that same gold glitter. And then I'm going to just roughly sort of colour them in. I'm going to stamp them a couple of times because it's always good to have spares, and I might go ahead and do a couple of versions of this card. Sometimes when you're on a roll, it's good to you know, do them in bulk, do more than one if they're going to work. And sometimes, because I'm such a lover of colour, if this works out how I'm imagining and hoping it will work out, then I might want to do it in a different colour scheme as well. So giving myself some options here for a different few versions of this. And I just want to take those leaves and just do them a couple more times as well. And this will all become abundantly clear as this comes together. Alright, now this is about where the fun begins, because in this Art Deco stamp set, which is not overtly Christmas themed, but it has lots of different options here as far as sentiments is concerned. But I thought that, you know, Christmas, one of the patterns that a lot of people use is like that houndstooth check, or that sort of flannel kind of look, if you like. And so I wanted to not recreate that, but create that sort of checkered pattern, and I was inspired by the square that comes in here, which fits nicely inside here, but I thought I could stamp it out as a pattern, and go with some sort of traditional-ish kind of Christmas colours. Well, maybe pink's not really a traditional Christmas colour, but if I do one version with pink and red and another version with the greens, maybe that will become sort of very Christmassy. And I like the idea that this stamp set kind of gives you the guide for these squares. So I'm going to just start by lining these up where I think they should go. And you've heard me say it before, with these sorts of things, I'm not going for perfect results. I'm okay with the idea that this looks a little bit sort of, well, hand stamped, because of course it is. And I think one way, so I'm using a dye-based ink here, certainly one way around this. I did think about using my Distress Oxides because they obviously stamp really nicely, but I was afraid that the Distress Oxides would not layer up. So see, as I do each one of these, the colour where they overlap is becoming darker. And I think, you know, with the pigment inks or those hybrid inks, because they're such a matte colour to begin with, I was afraid that this effect wouldn't really come through very well. So that's why I haven't gone with that. But certainly when you're stamping big blocks of colour, I think dye ink is not necessarily the best option as far as trying to get a really smooth look. And balmy, using my you know, mini Misty again, but moving this every single time, which I think would drive me crazy. I'm going to just embrace this mottled look. So I could keep on going with this lovely pink, but I thought I would then blend it out to maybe some, oh, I think I was going to do one here in the middle, and that's going to be, of course, the basis where my sentiment's going to go, right in the middle. So I know I didn't give you a lot of instructions about where to place these squares, but I hope you can sort of work that out by just watching what I did. Was that I started in the middle and then I've just progressed my way out where those stamps should go, where those squares should go. I'm going to move on to doing some red here at the edges, and again just basing it on where those gaps are, and being guided by these lovely guidelines in the background stamp here. And likewise, I chose to do the Art Deco background first, mainly for this guide. Otherwise, you know, like I'm always just thinking things through about what's going to be the best way to do this. And now I'm frustrated because can you see that? See what I've done? This one, this triangle is further down than what it should be. But you know what? Again, let's embrace the perfectly imperfect look. And maybe on my next version, I will plan it out better. You know, you've heard me say that many times before. But often I just start these things with an idea in my head, and I figure I'll figure it out as I go along. So I do have another one here ready to go. So I might try this one in some greens this time. We're on the home straight now, nearly done. I just finished off I actually trimmed down the panel, which helped get rid of some of that obviousness that I hadn't quite stamped it evenly, and likewise with the green one as well. And all I'm doing to finish it off is adding these little clusters of the little holly leaf with some of these leaves. And then I thought I would just finish with a couple of sequins, because you know I always add like a scatter of sequins or enamel dots or something like that. And I typically scatter them or make it look random by literally scattering them on. And they talk about doing it in odd numbers, and I tend to have it sort of go across somewhere, so might be happy with something like that. The other reason why I really like adding the scatter of things is because you can often plan to put them in places to cover up little mistakes. I'm just, you know, letting you in on all of my hints. And this is it. So this was a fun adventure to go on with these ultimately sort of simple Christmas cards, but just a little bit technique-y. Obviously I need some practice on the technique, but I like keeping this real for you guys. I like doing the process, you know, from start to finish for the first time as the camera's rolling, because then you can see how I sometimes need to you know, figure it out as I'm going along, because, you know, we're all real, we're all human. That's exactly how it works, right? So I'm not going to pretend that I had this all perfectly planned in my head. Obviously the results speak for themselves. but I'm not afraid to embrace those little bits that make us human, and the little parts of these projects that aren't quite perfection. Because that adds to the story. So I'm just mixing it up for this last one. And that's it. You can imagine doing this in lots of different colours. The patterns are different each time I've done this. But it's been super fun using this sort of not really obviously traditional Christmas stamp and turning it festive for the holiday season. Okay guys, thanks, and I will see you again. Bye.